Okay.
There you go.
All right. So maybe
Action.
this maybe this is one of your New Year's resolutions to deepen your skills with planning analytics, in which case, good job getting on. So um, we have some news on the Carpe Datum front. We were acquired by Converge Technology Solutions, which is exciting for us because it broadens our ability to help all of you, across the spectrum with technology solutions. So everything from data warehousing to managed services to cloud, app dev, even staffing and resourcing. So you probably gotten some information about that, but we're here to help you. And thanks for joining us this morning. And Francois Ross, if you've joined the previous sessions, is going to walk you through this. This will be the last session. He's sadly, Francois is moving on to some changes in his career. So we'll miss you, Francois, and wish you the best in what you're doing. And so these are the upcoming sessions. For those of you who aren't joining, if you want to be added to those, if you're not already, in a couple of weeks, we'll be covering the planning analytics for Excel, it's the latest version of that. But if you're still using perspectives and you want to learn more about planning analytics for Excel, which is really all of the future development for the Excel plugin is in that planning analytics for Excel version. So you definitely want to join and learn about that. And then the last session in this series will be February 3rd. And we're covering the planning analytics administration and kind of what's new and changed in that environment. And we have our master classes. So I think most of you have signed up for that. So if you're a current customer, that is free for you. If you have friends or colleagues that are not an existing customer, it's a small fee if they want to join, and that'll be really deep dive, really more kind of semi-formal education type sessions. So we'll be getting information to you on that in the coming weeks in terms of the details and timing. So on that note, Francois, I will turn it over to you, and for those of you on the line, feel free to chime in or ask questions. And we are recording this, and we'll send this out to you if you want to forward this to friends or colleagues who couldn't make it this morning.
Thanks, John. Francois Ross here. Glad to be here. This session is part of a series, like John said. I think it's the most interesting one because it really is something we've been waiting for a long time on the planning analytics side. I'm going to be demonstrating the introduction of predictive forecasting. As you guys know, IBM has acquired a lot of different technologies, one of them being SPSS a while back, as well as Watson. Actually, they didn't acquire Watson, but they kind of built a brand around a lot of different services around AI and advanced analytics. And finally, they are starting to embed it into their applications. It happened with Cognos a while back. And it's great to be able to predict and look at future, for example, in Cognos. But now that they integrated with planning, I think the impact of it is going to be much more because it allows the forecasters or anybody on the FP&A side to look at and leverage AI to look at different things, including, of course, predictive analytics, predictive values in the time series. So I got one slide before I head to the demo. It's code free, which is great. Of course, some organization may have some very advanced algorithms that they have developed over time. And that would, you can still integrate it with planning analytics. There could be another webcast or seminar. There's a lot of information online on how to integrate planning analytics with the Watson platform, for example, or Python to generate your forecast based on models that you have developed. But in this case, it's more of I would say, user-friendly, code-free AI integration into PA. It allows you to in the click of a button or a couple of buttons, it allows you to generate a time series predictive forecast model, and it allows you to rerun it by changing. You can change parameters, or you can of course manually override values, like, as which is one of the core capability of planning analytics. and allow you to rerun the model. It's a very embedded, interactive user interface. It allows you to store the forecasted data not only in the actual buckets, which could be dangerous. That's maybe not something we would totally recommend. But if you secured your model accordingly, it will override future values of your actuals. That's kind of the easy way. Or maybe a better practice is to create separate buckets as versions for forecasted data, as well as confidence level data. Because with every forecasted data, there's always you need to kind of understand or at least assess how confident the model is as far as accuracy is concerned. And you maybe want to store that data as well, so we can do that with the interface. Initially, it's available with exploration mode, which is the cross tab mode, but you can also make it available in line chart, bar charts, and column chart, which makes sense because this is dealing with time series, right? There's a couple of rules, actually 3 rules that I know about, and there may be more that are embedded into the code, but there are 3 rules that users should be aware of. First of all, the forecasted entities or buckets must be in the view. So it's not like it's going to forecast something that you don't have on display in the workspace. So it makes it easier, but at the same time, it kind of limits you. If you want to do that, meaning forecast entities that are not in your view, you can do it, via using scripts or coding, or probably a TI process to run it. The time series must be a single dimension, and that could be tricky in with some customers. I've seen a lot of customers that basically create a multi-dimension time series, so they have years as a separate dimension than months, for example. That's pretty common. That will not work in this case. So you need to make sure that you have a very unique time series, single dimension. It's okay if it does hierarchies, meaning quarters and months and weeks and days, but it has to be a single hierarchy, a single dimension. It's the only way it's going to work. And finally, the time series that you are forecasting must be at the same level. No consolidated column, like quarters and then months and then quarter 2 and then months. That's not going to work. And that makes sense also, right? Because how can it guess accurate predictive values if there are consolidated buckets within the actuals? Any question? Or we can, I guess we leave the question for the end. That'll be easier.
Well, I mean,
all right, so
one thing I'll say, Francois, there is that obviously we can create a subset that has the time at the necessary granularity, removing those consolidations. And then if you have multiple dimensions for your time, like years separate from months or weeks, we can, create a new dimension and use a TI process to move all that into one dimension for this use, as needed.
Correct. Yeah, you can definitely remodel actually in all the demo models that I have, you can see that the developers have created a forecast cube out of the same dimension. Makes it easier to manage, and that forecast cube is probably going to be used for other intentions as well moving forward. So that's probably a nice practice to do. Let's take a look. All right. Move to my demo environments. If you're familiar with this new look and feel, we demonstrated a couple of sessions ago. So it's the new workspace, new UI, a lot better looking and a lot more customizable and brandable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, instead of showing you demoware that's already done, I thought it'd be more impacting here to create one from scratch. So it's a little more challenging for me, because you never know what could happen, but I'm going to do a cooking show now from the beginning as opposed to show you when it's done. And then I can wrap up with showing you an example of a nicely brushed up application using forecasting. So let's create a new workbook from scratch, or a new book from scratch. And I'm going to use a very simple TM1 server, which you may have seen in demonstrations. It's a car sales one, so it's more revenue driven, more sales and revenue, budgeting and planning cubes. So it's probably simpler to use for that demonstration. I already created a view to get it started. So if I look at this sales cube, I already have a view that I call actual versus forecast. I'm going to drag this into my workspace and resize it. And you can see that I have actuals all the way through September 20th. So let's imagine we are in September of last year, and I have a few my rows here are basically car models, and I can drill down all the way to the actual car. And I have a few dimensions here. I'm focusing on actual. If I want to take a look at forecast, you see there's nothing in there. So just like a magic show, I want to prove to you that I have not prepared anything in advance. So we're going to start from scratch and bring your actuals here. Next thing I'm going to do to make this view more appealing, I'm going to duplicate this into another view, and I'm going to bring it underneath. And the purpose of this is to kind of turn that into a chart, to show you the charting capability of the forecasting as well. So I'm going to just prepare a view that's more appropriate to create a chart. So typical things that you guys are probably familiar with. I'm going to swap my rows and columns just like this. I'm going to replace my columns here, which are my product, with a metric like units. So it's kind of simplifying the view so that I can chart it and make sure the chart makes sense. I'm going to take my versions and I'm going to nest them right here. So now I see all my different versions, and you can see that there's already buckets that I created manually earlier yesterday for my forecasted high and my forecasted low, because I want to show you the feature on where you can actually store those values into buckets. But for the purpose of the chart, because that's going to make a pretty weird chart, I'm going to select a subset that I created that only compares actual versus forecast, right? And finally, because you see there's a lot of zeros here, and I don't want the zeros to be the bottom line on my chart. That's one of the feature I guess in the future they're gonna correct that. But when there's a zero, it does show a dot. So I want to eliminate my zeros and make sure the chart just shows values. And of course, you do that with this feature here. So I'm going to apply 0. So now I only see my actual through September. And finally, I'm ready to chart it into a line graph. And you can use can use bar, line. There we go. And maybe a little bit of static properties here I can change. I always like to see things a little more what they call cardinal, which is more rounded. So there we go. So now I got my chart. I got my data upstairs. Whoops. Let me just put it down here. And let's get into forecast. So to forecast, you have to have for this version at least, an exploration, right, or cross that to start with. So I'm going to click on the category that I want to forecast. By the way, I could have control click all of them, so you're not limited to only one at a time. So you can control click or shift click any categories that you would like to forecast forward. And I'm going to select the first one now for now, because that's what's defaulted on this chart for now. And I then click on the forecast button, which is right up here on the toolbar. Once you click on that, let me move this, go to meeting. Once you click on that, then you have your forecast interface. You have to do a few simple things to make it work. The first thing is to select your starting period. So if I look at this, I'm going to start forecasting in September. I know there'll be an overlap, but I think it's the right. I'll tell you why. From a chart perspective, it makes more sense, because then you'll see how better it looks on the chart when you overlap the last column of your forecast. And then automatically it's going to pick as default the last period of your time series that is displayed on this view. Again, keep in mind, it's only focusing on what's displayed on the view. Okay. If I would have removed December 21st from that view, it would have given me, November 21st, November 21 as the period end. Another feature you can do here is you can save the detail of the statistic as a comment, and what it's going to do is going to save it as a comment on the first forecasted column. So it'll be September right here, and it's going to show you everything that's all the metrics that are underneath that are supporting this model and their values. And that's more for statisticians or, I guess, data scientists for them to understand this. Now, if you click on the Advanced tab of the Forecast interface, there's a few other features I think that are great. First of all, you can auto-detect seasonality. That's usually what you want to do. But if you're in an industry where the peaks and bottoms are not really considered seasonality, you want to disable that, right? But here it's auto-detection. You can also ignore data from a certain period if you think it was an anomaly or something that is totally unique. You can take it off the equation. You can select the confidence interval. 95% is the default, but you can change that if you want. And here is cool. This is where you actually say, okay, I want to store my value in a separate version bucket, right? You could, if you don't touch that, the actuals starting September 20 are going to be overridden, right? All the zeros that you see here, which is probably tricky, and you may not want to do that. And maybe the actual is actually secured all together in your model. So if that's the case, what you want to do is just select the dimension where you're going to store those predicted value. And I'm going to put that in a forecast version that could have been manually created, right? And I'm going to put my highs into the upper bound, my upper bound into my high bucket, and my lower bound into my low bucket. And that's optional. And again, data scientists may be interested to be able to report against those values or compare or create threshold or accuracy percentages, blah, blah, blah. But, it's optional. So you save this, and then you can say, even if you save this, you still got to tell it that you will save the actual value consolidated into those buckets. Okay, so everything's here. You can do a preview of your forecast, and it's going to generate a line chart and show you those upper bound and lower bound. So instead of you creating a chart, it will create it for you here and tell you also how the accuracy is as far as high. So if you hover your mouse on it, it'll tell you it's pretty good. And I can tell by the pattern here that it's a pretty good confidence level. Even though I didn't have that many values on my view, it took all the other previous time series here, and moving forward, it basically was able to calculate about a year and 2 months of predicted value. If you click on statistical detail, this is what's going to be embedded into the comment of that initial forecasted cell, right? And you can see some data science metric terms or acronyms here. I actually looked at them this morning and I already forgot them. So I'm sorry, but you guys may know what they are. And those are all metrics that allow a data scientist or statistician to better understand what's behind the forecasted value, if there's anything that can be improved. Okay, so now that I'm ready to roll, I'm going to click on the forecast button. It's going to be pretty fast, but it depends on much value, how much data you have. It could take longer, and then it basically runs in the background, and then done. So if I look at my forecast, if I look at my forecast here, you're going to see the forecasted value now. If I refresh this chart, there you go. And the reason I built the view before switching to line chart the way I did is because I wanted to look like this. And that's just a good practice, as opposed to having a zero here at the bottom, or the line being cut or broken. So that's a nice way to display both your actual and forecast as separate colors. So if I click on properties here, field, you can see that I selected the view called actual versus forecast for my color. This is why you got a green color for forecasted value. If you don't do that, that chart's still going to work, but you're going to see, two separate lines, the same color, and that may not be what you want, just from a display perspective. So, and again, my other buckets like forecast high are populated as well. So that's it. It's very simple. You can start over at any time just by doing it again, or you can even control click and apply it to the other series, right? If I do this and do my forecast, everything's available. The only thing that's not available when you have multiple values is the preview. As you can see, it's grayed out. So it will not preview, at least with this version, it will not preview multiple multiple values, which maybe it's understandable. So that's it as far as I think it's great. Let me know what you think. And before you do that, I want to show you an example of another. That's demoware that came from IBM. It shows you a more, I would say, expanded view or workspace. Same functionality basically. However, you know, in here you can select your forecast selection here just with a widget, separate widget. And then you can, you know, run it. It's already defaulted to the right periods, so there's ways to do that as well. Everything's already done in this workspace, because when you save the workspace, it will save your forecast parameters as part of it, which makes it a lot more user-friendly, right? And then you click on forecast, and there you go. It should run and give you those values. So it's that, you know, you can embed this so that the users are not having to go through all the parameter that I showed you earlier. I think it's gonna. Did I run it right? Yeah, there you go. So here are my forecasted value, and that's more of a bar chart example. So if I'm gonna leave it now to questions. Any questions, anyone? That's all I had to show in this session. Any comment? Noise?
Francois,
Feedback? Question?
is this all you're showing us in PAW?
Yeah, this was all PAW. This is the new PAW though, but it's the latest version of PAW, correct?
Cool.
And we have we're also joined by Chris Corum. He's a managing partner and 25-year TM1 veteran, and he was messaging me. It looks like Francois or Chris, I'll let you explain. Sounds like there's one feature that actually works a little better than we thought.
Okay, let's hear it.
We can't hear Chris. Well, turns out we can use, apparently we can use year and we can use 2 dimensions for the time forecasting is what he was sharing. So I don't know that that's a giant thing for anyone on the call or if you're worried about it, but he was just clarifying that. So thanks for that those additional details.
My apologies.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now.
Hey, so Francois, and for everybody on the call, I just wanted to let you know there was some problem historically when you had to stack, let's say you had year and month time dimensions. You have to stack them in the columns, just like Francois has them kind of just has a single dimension showing, but it has to be a continuous piece of time. But you can have 2 dimensions now. There was some problems historically where it didn't work, which is probably what Francois ran into. But in the new versions, that's all been fixed up, and you can have a separate year and month dimension, and it will analyze the data in your cube and do the time series forecasting just fine.
No, great. Yeah, that's what I'm showing now is 57. 57, that doesn't work in here. Like the Smart Code cube, Chris, doesn't work. But if and it's a weird error message, but I know that they're already what 5.9 now or 5.8, 5.9.
Well, 660 is coming out here shortly, and yes,
Okay.
it was a known issue that you just ran into. But so for those people who have cubes that have separate year and month dimensions, this forecasting should work just fine.
All right. One rule listed. Any other questions, comments, feedback?
Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll send this recording out to you if you want to refer to it later or share it with anyone. And hopefully you can join us in a couple weeks for the next session on the Planning Analytics for Excel plugin. So thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.